What if I told you that reconciliation between Prince Harry and King Charles may not be about forgiveness at all, but about a list of demands so outrageous, so self-serving, that it could shatter the monarchy from the inside out? Imagine a father and son, bound by blood yet divided by power, status, and deep betrayal. Now imagine that the only way forward isn't love, isn't compromise, but 9 conditions that read more like the rules of a hostage negotiation than the path to healing a royal family. Shocking? Yes. Unbelievable? Perhaps. But here's the truth. Prince Harry's so-called roadmap to reconciliation reveals far more about entitlement, legacy, and unresolved pain than it does about peace. From the very start, Harry's story has been one of contradictions. The boy who walked behind his mother's coffin at just 12 years old captured the hearts of millions, embodying grief and resilience on a global stage. Yet that boy grew into a man who now stands in defiance of the very institution that raised him, demanding recognition while simultaneously rejecting duty. How do we reconcile the image of the vulnerable child with the figure of the man issuing ultimatums to a king? That contradiction is the emotional heartbeat of this saga, and it's what makes his list of demands both fascinating and terrifying for the monarchy's future. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Before we dive into each explosive condition, let's ask a bigger question. Why now? Why, after years of silence broken only through interviews, books, and documentaries, would Harry suddenly signal that reconciliation is even on the table, but only if his demands are met? The timing isn't accidental. Charles is aging. William is stepping into greater visibility. The monarchy is in transition, and Harry knows that leverage is fleeting. Public sympathy is a currency, and so are titles, security, and influence. Could it be that Harry sees this as his final chance to secure a legacy for himself, Meghan, and their children before the monarchy moves on without them? And that brings us to the atmosphere surrounding this potential reconciliation. The British public has never been more divided. Some see Harry as a truth-teller, exposing the archaic machinery of the monarchy and its cruelty. Others see him as a spoiled prince, unwilling to accept the consequences of his choices, demanding privilege without responsibility. But here's the twist. Both perspectives contain truth. Harry has suffered. He has been mistreated by the press and perhaps misunderstood by his family. Yet his actions also reveal a streak of entitlement that cannot be ignored. This duality, victim and villain, creates a tension that makes every one of his demands both outrageous and strangely plausible. Let's not forget the global audience. Across America, Harry and Meghan are seen differently than in Britain. In California, they are celebrity royalty, mingling with Hollywood elites, crafting their brand, and playing the part of cultural commentators. But in Britain, they are the couple who walked away, who rejected tradition, and yet still cling to the prestige of titles and royal association. Isn't it ironic that the very thing Harry claimed to escape, the suffocating weight of the crown, is the same thing he now seeks to reclaim? The irony is almost Shakespearean, and it sets the stage for one of the most dramatic family negotiations in modern history. Now, let's add one more layer: emotion. Reconciliation is not just about politics or money. It's about wounds that have never healed. Harry has often spoken about his mother, Princess Diana, and her struggles within the royal system. He sees echoes of her pain in Meghan's experience, fueling his resentment toward his father and brother. Can we really separate these demands from the ghost of Diana, from the trauma of a son who watched his mother suffer and die under the glare of the paparazzi? Or are these demands less about reconciliation and more about vengeance, about rewriting the story Diana never got to finish? But here's where it gets even more unsettling. These aren't private conditions whispered in confidence. They're revelations that, once leaked, inflamed the very public Harry claims to want protection from. Demanding titles, money, and apologies doesn't just affect his family. It shakes the monarchy itself. Because if King Charles caves, what does that say about the institution's strength? And if he refuses, does it mark the final, irreversible split between father and son, king and prince? Either outcome is explosive. Picture this: Charles, a king who waited 70 years for the throne, now confronted with a son who left, rebelled, and humiliated the family on a global stage. Yet who dares to return, but only if 9 narcissistic demands are granted. The image is almost too surreal to believe, and yet it captures the fragility of monarchy in the modern world. No matter how gilded the crown, it is still worn by men with weaknesses, grudges, and wounds. And that brings us to the most chilling part. Among these demands, one stands apart. While titles, money, and security may enrage the public, it is Harry's final condition that cuts deepest, because it doesn't just threaten Charles's reign. It reopens the wounds of Diana's death. It forces Camilla, the queen consort, into the line of fire. It risks unraveling decades of fragile peace within the royal family. And once you hear it, you'll understand why some insiders believe reconciliation may no longer be possible at all. But before we uncover that ultimate demand, we must walk through the others, one by one, each more shocking than the last. From royal titles for children who may never live in the UK, to taxpayer-funded security for a prince who turned his back on duty, to demands for censorship of the free press. It's a list that reads less like a peace offering and more like a royal ransom note. So here's the question I'll leave you with. Is Harry seeking reconciliation or domination? Is this the cry of a wounded son, or the strategy of a man who knows that leverage is slipping away? The answer may lie not in his words, but in the demands themselves. And when we reveal the 9th condition, the one involving Queen Camilla, you'll see why even forgiveness might no longer be enough. Because what Harry is asking for isn't just reconciliation. It's a reordering of the monarchy itself. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. He walked away. He stepped down. He declared he wanted freedom, privacy, and the chance to live life on his own terms. Yet now, after years of throwing grenades from across the Atlantic, Prince Harry has the audacity to demand something that strikes at the very heart of the monarchy: the full restoration of his royal titles and working status. Think about that for a moment. This is the same man who told Oprah Winfrey that service is universal and insisted he didn't need a crown to make a difference. The same man who signed multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify, cashing in on the very story he once called a prison. And yet, behind closed doors, insiders claim Harry has drawn a red line. Reconciliation with King Charles will only be possible if he is reinstated as a working royal, complete with the HRH, His Royal Highness, style that he so publicly discarded. Why would Harry want this back? Isn't it a contradiction of everything he's stood for since Megxit? Or is it something deeper, a craving not just for recognition, but for the validation he feels was ripped away when he stepped down? This demand isn't simply about titles. It's about identity. Without the HRH, Harry is just Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, a title that, while still impressive, doesn't carry the same gravitas in royal circles. In Britain, the HRH is a symbol of duty, power, and respect. It's a reminder that you belong to the inner sanctum of monarchy. Losing it was not just a bureaucratic formality, it was a symbolic exile. And exile cuts deep. Let's rewind to 2020. When Harry and Meghan announced they would step back as senior royals, the palace responded with a compromise. They would no longer use HRH titles and would repay taxpayer funds spent on Frogmore Cottage. At the time, many assumed Harry was comfortable with the arrangement. After all, hadn't he chosen freedom? But in reality, friends have since revealed that Harry felt humiliated, stripped of the honorific he'd carried since birth. It wasn't just a title. It was his mother's legacy. It was Diana's sonhood, enshrined in 3 letters. Now, demanding the return of those letters, Harry is sending a clear message. I am not just your son. I am your equal in this family. I deserve to be recognized. But here's the irony. How can you demand the perks of an institution you've spent years criticizing as archaic, toxic, and oppressive? Isn't that like quitting your job in a fit of rage, only to demand your old desk, your old salary, and the corner office, but without the workload? And that's where the controversy explodes. For the public, this is entitlement at its peak. The man who left duty behind is now insisting on a seat at the table, as if nothing happened. For supporters of the monarchy, it reeks of hypocrisy. For critics of the monarchy, it's proof that even rebels cannot escape the gravitational pull of the crown. But let's ask the hard question. Why would Harry risk such backlash? Could it be that the HRH title is the key to everything else? Think about it. Without the HRH, Harry is a celebrity. With it, he is a prince with institutional weight. That title changes how the world treats him, how his children are regarded, and how negotiations with Hollywood giants are framed. HRH isn't just about Buckingham Palace. It's about leverage. It's about opening doors that no amount of Netflix money can buy. Now imagine King Charles facing this demand. On one hand, he is a father longing for unity. On the other, he is a monarch tasked with protecting the crown's dignity. If Charles restores Harry's HRH, he risks appearing weak, caving to ultimatums from a son who has publicly accused the family of racism, neglect, and cruelty. If he refuses, reconciliation may collapse entirely. Either choice fractures the monarchy. And this is where William comes in. The Prince of Wales, the heir to the throne, has reportedly been adamant. Harry cannot be allowed back into the fold on such terms. William sees it as dangerous precedent. If Harry can abandon duty and then reclaim titles at will, what does that say about the future of the monarchy? What message does it send to the world? That being royal is a costume you can slip on and off whenever it suits you. For William, who has shouldered the burden of duty without complaint, Harry's demand is an insult. But let's not forget Meghan's role. For Meghan, titles have always been a point of contention. Remember the infamous debate about Archie's birthright? Meghan claimed Archie was denied the title of prince due to discrimination. If Harry regains HRH, it strengthens Meghan's argument that titles should extend to their children. It's not just about Harry's identity. It's about solidifying her own and ensuring their family's place in royal history. Could it be that Meghan is the quiet architect behind this demand, pushing Harry to reclaim what she believes should never have been lost? Let's pause and ask, what do you think? Should Harry be allowed to walk back into the monarchy with the full weight of HRH after abandoning it? Or should titles, once surrendered, remain out of reach forever? Because here's the danger. If Charles says yes, it will ignite outrage across Britain. Taxpayers who watched Harry fly private jets to California, cash in on royal secrets, and attack the institution will not accept footing the bill for his royal lifestyle again. If Charles says no, Harry may double down, escalating the feud in ways that could destroy any chance of future reconciliation. This isn't just about letters on paper. It's about loyalty, legacy, and the monarchy's survival. And yet, as bold as this demand is, it was only the beginning. Because Harry didn't stop at himself. No, he dragged the next generation into the fight. His children, Archie and Lilibet, became pawns in his second demand, a move that shocked even seasoned royal watchers. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Imagine being a child who has never set foot inside the gilded halls of Buckingham Palace. A child raised in California's sunshine, far from the pomp and tradition of Britain. Yet, despite this, Prince Harry has made it clear. Reconciliation with King Charles must include royal titles for Archie and Lilibet. Not honorary recognition, not symbolic gestures, but full recognition as Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, complete with their rightful places in the line of succession. This demand is shocking for many reasons. For starters, it drags the next generation into a feud they had no part in. Archie and Lilibet are innocent children, yet their names now carry the weight of political bargaining chips. Why would Harry do this? What does it reveal about his motives? And perhaps more importantly, what does it reveal about the fragility of the monarchy itself? Let's step back. When Archie was born in 2019, Meghan Markle voiced a grievance that would later become a global talking point. During her Oprah interview, Meghan claimed the royal family denied Archie a title because of concerns about how dark his skin might be. That allegation of racism shook the monarchy to its core. But palace insiders argued differently, pointing to long-standing royal protocols. Under rules established by King George V in 1917, only the children and grandchildren of a monarch are entitled to be prince or princess. At the time of Archie's birth, Queen Elizabeth II was on the throne, making Archie the great-grandchild of the monarch, not a grandchild. By tradition, he wasn't entitled. But times changed. When Queen Elizabeth passed away in 2022 and Charles became king, the rules shifted. Suddenly, Archie and Lilibet technically qualified for the titles. Yet the palace was quiet. Days, then weeks, then months passed. No official announcement. For Meghan and Harry, this silence was deafening. For them, it symbolized rejection. For critics, it symbolized caution. Why grant prince and princess titles to children whose parents openly reject royal life? Here lies the contradiction. Harry left the monarchy to protect his children from the same suffocating scrutiny he endured as a boy. He declared he wanted to give them a normal life. And yet, he now demands those very children be crowned with titles that guarantee they will never have normal lives. Is this protection or prestige? Is it safety or status? Think of what these titles mean beyond symbolism. If Archie and Lilibet are recognized as prince and princess, they enter the official line of succession with full honors. Their names appear on documents, their titles recognized across the world. Even in California, even in Hollywood, those titles open doors. Prince Archie is not just a name, it's a brand. Princess Lilibet is not just a title, it's a golden ticket into a legacy stretching back centuries. Could it be that Harry and Meghan, despite their criticism of the monarchy, understand the irreplaceable power of that brand? Let's also consider the public perception. For many in Britain, this demand feels outrageous. Why should children raised in Montecito, children who may never serve the crown, receive the same recognition as George, Charlotte, and Louis, children who will dedicate their lives to royal duty? It feels, to some, like an attempt to cherry-pick the benefits of monarchy without paying the price. And yet, for Harry, the demand is emotional. He knows the pain of being called despair. He knows what it feels like to live in the shadow of a sibling destined for the throne. Perhaps, deep down, he believes granting Archie and Lilibet these titles ensures they will never feel the same rejection he felt growing up. It's not just about entitlement. It's about rewriting his own childhood pain through his children. But here's the twist. Royal experts suggest this demand isn't just about recognition. It's about succession security. By cementing Archie and Lilibet as prince and princess, Harry effectively locks them into the royal bloodline, regardless of his own standing. Even if Harry is cut off, even if Meghan is sidelined, Archie and Lilibet remain royal. It's a clever move, almost a safety net. No matter what happens between Harry and the monarchy, his children's positions are safeguarded for generations. Now imagine how King Charles and Prince William view this. For Charles, it is a delicate balancing act. He loves his grandchildren, but he must also protect the institution. Granting them titles risks sparking outrage in Britain, where taxpayers already resent Harry's demands. For William, the stakes are even higher. As future king, he must weigh whether elevating Archie and Lilibet dilutes the monarchy's core, its principle of duty. After all, how can children raised outside the system, in a country that once rejected the crown itself, claim equal footing with those raised inside it? And this is where the emotional tension peaks. For Harry, denying his children titles is a personal insult. For Charles and William, granting them could weaken the monarchy. It is a tug-of-war where no side can win without losing something precious. But here's what makes this demand even more explosive. It sets the stage for everything that follows. Because once Archie and Lilibet are declared prince and princess, the question of their protection arises. Royals are not just titles, they are targets. And Harry's next demand directly ties into that reality. Because what good is a title if your child is not safe? And that's where we turn to Harry's third demand, one that pits privilege against the British taxpayer, sparking outrage far beyond the palace walls. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What good is a crown without protection? What good is a title if you cannot guarantee the safety of those who bear it? These questions lie at the heart of Harry's third demand, perhaps one of the most controversial and incendiary conditions for reconciliation with King Charles. Harry insists that he and his family be granted taxpayer-funded, 24/7 royal security whenever they are in the United Kingdom. Not privately hired protection, not a temporary arrangement. Full, permanent, publicly funded security, just as if they had never stepped away from the monarchy at all. At first glance, this demand might seem reasonable. After all, Harry is Diana's son. He knows better than anyone the danger of paparazzi, the intrusion of the press, the threat that comes with being royal. His mother died in a Paris tunnel, pursued by photographers. For Harry, the trauma of that night is not history. It is a living, breathing fear that shapes every decision he makes as a husband and father. He has said repeatedly that he refuses to let Meghan or their children suffer the same fate. Isn't it fair, then, that he asks for protection? But here's the contradiction. Harry and Meghan chose to step away from royal life. They rejected duty. They relocated to California. They built a new brand, signed multi-million-dollar deals, and insisted they no longer wanted to be burdened by the trap of monarchy. If that's true, why should British taxpayers, millions of ordinary people struggling with the cost of living, be forced to fund their lavish security demands when they choose to fly back for events, photo ops, or court cases? Isn't this the very definition of wanting privilege without responsibility? Let's go deeper. Security for royals isn't cheap. We're talking tens of millions annually. Highly trained teams, armored vehicles, intelligence coordination, the works. For working royals who dedicate their lives to duty, the British public grudgingly accepts this expense as part of maintaining the institution. But for Harry, a prince who has effectively become a celebrity in California, critics argue this is no longer a right. It's a luxury. If he wants protection, shouldn't he fund it himself? Especially when he and Meghan reportedly signed deals worth more than $100 million. And yet, Harry fought this battle in court. In fact, he launched a legal challenge against the UK Home Office after being told he was no longer entitled to automatic taxpayer-funded protection. His argument? That his safety, and by extension his family's, cannot be guaranteed without state involvement. He even offered to personally cover the costs, but was still denied full access to the government's security apparatus. This legal fight exposed just how far Harry is willing to go to secure what he believes is his birthright. Not just titles, not just recognition, but the protective shield of the crown itself. Let's pause here and ask the uncomfortable question. Is this about safety, or is it about symbolism? For Harry, taxpayer-funded security may represent more than bodyguards. It may represent validation that he is still, in the eyes of Britain, a prince worth protecting. It is an acknowledgement that no matter where he lives, no matter what he has said, he is still part of the monarchy. Private security might provide safety, but it does not provide status. And status is the undercurrent in every one of Harry's demands. Now consider how this looks to the public. Imagine the outrage of an ordinary British family paying higher energy bills, struggling with inflation, only to read headlines that Harry wants them to foot the bill for his California-born children's protection. It sparks fury. It feeds the narrative that Harry is out of touch, entitled, and blind to the sacrifices of those he once claimed to serve. It cements his image not as the people's prince, but as the pampered prince. But here's where it gets even more dramatic. This demand isn't just about money. It's about trust. By insisting on taxpayer-funded security, Harry is essentially demanding a seat back at the royal table. Security is reserved for insiders, for those actively serving the monarchy. For Charles and William, granting Harry this privilege could be dangerous. It blurs the line between working royal and private celebrity. If Harry is allowed security without service, what stops others from demanding the same? Where does the institution draw the line? And imagine the position this places King Charles in. He is not just a father, but a sovereign. To give in to Harry's demand could make him look weak, favoring his son over the rules that apply to all others. To refuse risks alienating Harry forever, perhaps even keeping his grandchildren away from the UK entirely. For Charles, it is a no-win situation. For William, the frustration is even sharper. William has shouldered the burden of duty without complaint. He has accepted the security arrangements as part of his role, as part of the sacrifice of monarchy. For him, Harry's demand is an insult to the very principle of service. Why should his brother, who abandoned the system, still enjoy its protections without earning them? But let's not underestimate the personal angle here. For Harry, this isn't just bureaucracy, it's life and death. He has spoken about threats, about the constant fear for Meghan and his children. Whether you believe he is exaggerating or not, the fear itself is real. And fear has a way of driving demands that logic cannot contain. For Harry, reconciliation without security is not reconciliation at all. It is a trap waiting to be sprung. Yet, no matter how emotionally understandable this may be, the optics are devastating. Harry's demand for taxpayer-funded protection exposes the greatest irony of all. He sought freedom, but true freedom requires independence. By asking for the public to foot the bill, he undermines his entire narrative of breaking away. He proves that even in exile, he cannot escape dependence on the very institution he criticizes. And here's where the cliffhanger rises. Because demanding titles for his children and taxpayer-funded protection for his family wasn't enough. Harry wanted more than recognition. He wanted roots. He wanted a permanent home in Britain, owned, managed, and protected by the crown itself. Because what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Frogmore Cottage. That small, picturesque home on the Windsor estate once symbolized Harry and Meghan's compromise with the crown. A grace and favor residence given to them by Queen Elizabeth, renovated at great cost, and later surrendered when their royal rift deepened. To some, it was more than enough, a royal property in the heart of the UK, even after they'd abandoned their duties. But to Harry, Frogmore was an insult. Temporary. Conditional. A reminder that he was an outsider. That's why his fourth demand for reconciliation was as bold as it was audacious. A permanent royal residence in the UK, owned and controlled by the palace, secured for his exclusive use. Let that sink in. Harry, who publicly declared he wanted to build a life outside the monarchy, is now demanding a physical foothold back inside it. Not a rented house, not a lone cottage. A permanent residence, his home base in Britain, guaranteed by King Charles. Why? Because for Harry, real reconciliation doesn't mean Zoom calls or symbolic visits. It means bricks and mortar. It means a place of belonging. It means proof, in stone and crown-owned property, that he remains a royal no matter where he lives. On the surface, this demand may sound like entitlement, and perhaps it is, but underneath it lies something more raw: insecurity. Harry has always lived in palaces, castles, and stately homes. Kensington Palace, Clarence House, Windsor, Balmoral, Sandringham. These weren't just places, they were sanctuaries. Even in his rebellion, Harry craves the familiarity of walls guarded by tradition and soldiers in uniform. Perhaps he fears that without a permanent royal residence, he will never truly have a place in the family again. But here's where the irony strikes. When Harry and Meghan left in 2020, they insisted on independence. They declared they no longer wanted to be shackled to palace life. They sought privacy in Canada, then freedom in California. They bought a mansion in Montecito worth millions, complete with sprawling gardens, tennis courts, and chicken coops. They built their dream home. And yet, after achieving all of this, they now want to return to the crown and claim a residence paid for, maintained by, and symbolically tied to the monarchy. Isn't that the ultimate contradiction? For the British public, this is galling. Imagine working long hours, paying high taxes, and struggling to cover bills, only to learn that Harry, who has openly criticized your country's press, government, and monarchy, wants a palace-funded pied-a-terre for when he visits. The outrage writes itself. Why should we give him a palace when he doesn't even want to be British anymore? One can almost hear people asking. Now consider King Charles's dilemma. On one hand, he is a father. He knows that offering Harry a permanent residence might build a bridge, a space for reconciliation to flourish. On the other, he is a monarch. The optics of granting such a demand could be catastrophic. To reward rebellion with property risks appearing weak, indulgent, and out of touch. To refuse risks widening the rift, pushing Harry and Meghan further into exile. And then there's William. For William, the heir to the throne, the demand is more than outrageous. It's insulting. William has devoted his life to the crown. He lives within the system, serves within the system, and accepts the sacrifices it demands. To see Harry, who abandoned those same duties, come back and demand a luxury home would cut to the core of William's sense of justice. For him, it's not just entitlement, it's hypocrisy. But there's more to this demand than entitlement or hypocrisy. There's strategy. A permanent residence in Britain does more than provide Harry with a place to stay. It cements his family's place within the monarchy. It ensures Archie and Lilibet have a physical link to their heritage, their titles, their lineage. It gives them roots in the soil of Windsor, even if they grow up in California. It is, in effect, a royal insurance policy, one that guarantees Harry's bloodline cannot be erased from the kingdom. Think about the symbolism. Diana never had a palace of her own. Camilla has been integrated into Charles's homes. Meghan has been portrayed as an outsider. But with a permanent residence, Harry gives Meghan and his children undeniable status. Every time they step into Britain, they step onto royal ground. They cannot be ignored. They cannot be erased. But this isn't just about status, it's also about control. Harry reportedly hated living under the constant scrutiny of courtiers and palace aides. By demanding a permanent residence, he's not just asking for property. He's asking for autonomy, a space that belongs to him, not to the institution, yet still carries the institution's authority. A paradox, yes, but a deliberate one. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So, ask yourself, is this demand about reconciliation, or is it about power? Is Harry trying to reconnect with his roots, or is he leveraging his position to force the monarchy into legitimizing his dual life? Here's the danger. If Charles grants this demand, the monarchy risks normalizing a new model. Royals who live abroad, cherry-pick duties, and still claim permanent privileges at the palace. If Charles refuses, the bitterness deepens, feeding the cycle of grievance that Harry and Meghan thrive upon. Either way, the crown loses. But perhaps the most shocking part is what comes next. Because a residence isn't free. It's not just about walls and windows, it's about money. And Harry wasn't content with titles, security, or a home. No, his next demand struck at the monarchy's purse strings with a bluntness that stunned even the most jaded insiders. Because reconciliation, in Harry's view, came with a price tag, and the number attached would make headlines around the world. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. How much is forgiveness worth? How much does reconciliation cost when it comes to the monarchy? For Prince Harry, the answer was clear: millions. His fifth demand, perhaps the most brazen of them all, was financial. Backdated compensation for the years since he stepped down, and ongoing royal funding to sustain his family's lifestyle. It wasn't simply about being welcomed back into the fold. It was about being paid. Let's pause here. Think about the symbolism of this demand. Harry and Meghan declared their independence in 2020, stepping away from royal duties and announcing they would become financially self-sufficient. At the time, they even repaid the £2.4 million in taxpayer funds used to renovate Frogmore Cottage, claiming they wanted no ties, no strings, no obligations. It was supposed to be a clean break. And yet, just a few years later, Harry is reportedly insisting that reconciliation cannot happen unless the monarchy reopens its coffers and funnels cash to him once more. Is this reconciliation or ransom? Now, let's not forget the couple's ventures. The Netflix deal, the Spotify podcast, the memoir Spare. These were not just projects. They were lifelines, cash cows designed to prove Harry and Meghan could thrive without royal funding. At first, the sums were staggering. Whispers of $100 million from Netflix, $20 million from Penguin Random House, $25 million from Spotify. But over time, cracks appeared. Spotify ended the partnership. Netflix shifted focus. Book sales brought scrutiny. The illusion of endless financial security began to fade. Could this demand for royal money be less about principle and more about survival? Consider the irony. Harry once told the world he left because he wanted freedom, not a paycheck. He claimed he wanted to protect Meghan from the system that suffocated Diana. But now, his demand for financial compensation paints him as cash-hungry, desperate to maintain a Montecito lifestyle that independence alone cannot sustain. Isn't that the ultimate contradiction? But there's more to it than money. For Harry, financial support represents legitimacy. Royals don't just earn titles. They earn stipends, inheritances, and funding from the Duchy of Cornwall or the sovereign grant. By demanding compensation, Harry is effectively demanding to be treated as a working royal again, not as an exile. He's demanding the same privileges as his brother William, despite abandoning the same responsibilities. And what about the public? For the average British taxpayer, this demand is infuriating. Imagine living through inflation, austerity, and rising energy costs, only to discover that a prince who chose California is demanding millions from the very institution he criticizes. It fuels resentment. It feeds headlines branding him greedy, entitled, and out of touch. And the optics couldn't be worse. The man who left the monarchy to stand on his own 2 feet is now asking for a handout. For King Charles, this demand cuts especially deep. Charles spent decades rehabilitating the monarchy's finances, streamlining the number of working royals, and preparing for a more modern, less extravagant institution. Now his own son is threatening to unravel all of that work. To cave would make Charles look weak, indulgent, and hypocritical. To refuse could cement the fracture forever. And then there's William. For him, the demand is not only insulting, it's dangerous. William has built his reputation on duty, stability, and preparation for kingship. He represents the future of a monarchy that must appear leaner, more responsible, and more in touch with the public. For William, Harry's financial demands risk sabotaging that future. To give in would make William look like the dutiful son subsidizing the reckless one. To resist would make him the villain in his brother's narrative. Either way, William is trapped in a web woven by Harry's ultimatum. But let's not overlook Meghan's role. For her, financial independence has always been a priority. From acting to lifestyle blogging to brand building, she has always sought control over her image and income. Yet Hollywood is fickle, and the Sussex brand has lost some of its luster. Could it be that Meghan sees royal money not as dependence, but as restitution? Restitution for the pain, for the exile, for the humiliation she claims to have endured? Could this demand be her way of cashing in on suffering, framed as justice? Here's a twist to consider. Some insiders speculate Harry's demand isn't just about money for now, it's about back pay. He reportedly feels he and Meghan were forced into financial exile, punished unfairly for wanting a different path. In his mind, he deserves reimbursement for the years he could have been a working royal, complete with funding, staff, and support. If true, this demand isn't simply outrageous, it's revolutionary. It reframes exile not as consequence, but as injustice. And it asks the monarchy to pay for its mistreatment. But here's where the emotional stakes rise. Money has always been a sore point in Harry's life. As a young man, he watched William inherit advantages as the heir, the Duchy of Cornwall, greater financial security, a more significant role. Harry, as the spare, always had less. Could this demand for money be less about cash and more about correcting a lifetime of imbalance? Is Harry really asking for reconciliation, or is he demanding financial recognition that he was always shortchanged? Now ask yourself, what happens if Charles agrees? Public fury, a monarchy branded corrupt, a king accused of buying silence. What happens if he refuses? A son alienated, perhaps permanently. Harry could retaliate with new interviews, new books, new bombshells. In other words, Charles loses either way. And yet, money was not Harry's only demand for restitution. Because for all the wealth in the world, Harry still claims to carry wounds that no amount of cash can heal. And in his sixth demand, he sought something that shook the monarchy to its core. Not millions, not mansions, but a public apology from the king and the heir himself, William. Yes, you heard that right. Harry wants his father and his brother to publicly bow their heads and admit fault. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Forgiveness wasn't enough. Healing wasn't enough. For Prince Harry, reconciliation would require something much deeper, much more public, and infinitely more humiliating for the monarchy. His sixth demand was not about money, not about security, not even about titles. It was about an act of contrition that would shake the foundation of royal pride, a formal, public apology from King Charles and Prince William. Think about that for a moment. The King of England, the man who waited 7 decades for the throne, standing before the world and apologizing to his estranged son. Prince William, the heir to the throne, the man who has never wavered in duty, forced to publicly admit fault. Can you imagine the optics? For the monarchy, an institution built on dignity, tradition, and the projection of strength, such an apology would be unprecedented. But for Harry, this isn't just about optics. It's about vindication. For years, he has claimed he was mistreated by his family. He has spoken of feeling like despair, overlooked, silenced, and unsupported. He has accused his father of coldness, his brother of cruelty, and the institution of negligence. And yet, in all his interviews, all his memoirs, all his Netflix documentaries, there remains one missing piece: accountability from those he accuses. This demand for apology is Harry's attempt to extract that missing piece, not in private, but in the court of global opinion. Now, let's analyze why this is so shocking. Apologies in the monarchy are rare, very rare. They are carefully worded statements of regret or sympathy, crafted by palace aides, designed to avoid legal responsibility or reputational damage. When Queen Elizabeth II offered regret over colonial wrongs, it was measured, diplomatic, and symbolic. But what Harry is asking for is different. He wants his father and brother, as individuals, to admit they were wrong. Not the palace, not the crown. Charles and William, personally. Can you see why this is explosive? Such an apology would set a dangerous precedent. If the king and heir apologize to Harry, what's to stop calls for apologies on bigger, historic grievances? Colonialism, empire, scandals long buried in palace corridors. It could open floodgates the monarchy has fought for centuries to keep shut. But let's bring this back to family. For Charles, the demand cuts like a knife. He is a man who has endured his own scandals. Diana, Camilla, decades of public criticism. He has spent years rebuilding his reputation, presenting himself as a steady, dignified monarch. To publicly apologize now would be to undo that work, to show weakness, not just as a king, but as a father. And yet, what father doesn't want peace with his son? Could Charles be tempted to swallow his pride for the sake of reconciliation? And then there's William. The tension between the brothers has been one of the most painful, public aspects of this feud. William, who once walked shoulder to shoulder with Harry through grief, now finds himself painted as cold, unfeeling, even cruel in Harry's narrative. For William, to apologize would feel like betrayal, not only of himself, but of the institution he has sworn to protect. He has given his entire life to the monarchy. Why should he apologize to the brother who abandoned it? For William, this demand is more than unreasonable. It's insulting. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. Insiders suggest Harry's demand for apology is not just about words, it's about power. By forcing Charles and William to publicly apologize, Harry would flip the hierarchy of the monarchy. For one brief moment, he would stand above them, not as a subject, not as the spare, but as the wronged party to whom the king and heir must bow. It's symbolic revenge, a rewriting of roles, a chance for the boy who felt overshadowed to finally eclipse his family, even if just for a moment. Now, let's ask the hard question. What exactly would they apologize for? Mistreatment of Meghan? Neglect of Harry's mental health? Failure to protect him from the press? Each of these accusations carries heavy implications. A public admission of fault could damage the monarchy's credibility beyond repair. Imagine the king and heir saying, "Yes, we failed Harry." Wouldn't that be tantamount to saying, "Yes, the monarchy itself failed"? And what about Meghan? For her, this demand is personal. She has spoken about feeling silenced, unsupported, even targeted within the palace. A public apology to Harry would, by extension, be an apology to her. Imagine the validation that would bring, a global acknowledgement that Meghan was wronged by the royal family. It would rewrite her legacy from controversial outsider to vindicated victim. No wonder this demand matters so much to her. Yet, here's the cruel irony. The more Harry demands apologies, the less likely he is to get them. The monarchy survives on pride, on dignity, on never showing weakness. By asking for something the institution is almost incapable of giving, Harry ensures the standoff continues. Is that intentional? Could it be that Harry knows Charles and William will never apologize, and that's the point? That the demand itself gives him leverage, keeping the wound open, the story alive, the feud burning bright in the public eye? But let's not forget, the world is watching. For supporters of Harry, this demand is justice. For critics, it is narcissism at its peak. And once again, Charles finds himself trapped. To apologize would humiliate the crown. To refuse would paint him, in Harry's narrative, as a stubborn, unrepentant father. It is a lose-lose scenario. And yet, as audacious as this demand is, Harry didn't stop there. He didn't just want apologies. He wanted control. Control over something far bigger than family disagreements. Something that touches the very heart of British democracy, the press. Because Harry's seventh demand was unprecedented, and perhaps the most dangerous of them all. He wanted the palace to intervene with the media, to censor the stories, to silence the critics, to control the narrative itself. But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. The British monarchy has always lived in a delicate dance with the press. From Diana's tragic pursuit in Paris, to William and Kate's carefully curated family photos, to Meghan's relentless tabloid scrutiny, the relationship between royals and reporters is a story in itself. But Harry's seventh demand turned that story into a battlefield. He reportedly insisted that reconciliation with King Charles could only happen if the palace took direct action to control how the press reported on him and Meghan. In plain terms, he wanted the monarchy to intervene with British media outlets to stop the negative coverage. Now, pause for a moment. Think about the gravity of that. A prince demanding editorial control over the free press. It sounds like something from another era, when monarchs could silence critics with the stroke of a quill. But this is the 21st century. Britain prides itself on a free and often ferocious media, where no one, not even kings, are beyond scrutiny. For Harry to demand censorship, backed by the palace itself, is not just controversial. It's incendiary. Let's dig into why. Harry's war with the media has defined much of his adult life. From the tabloids exposing his youthful indiscretions to the paparazzi hounding his relationships, he has long been a target. The press mocked his wild nights out. They dissected his romances. They even ridiculed his military service. And then came Meghan. Suddenly, the tone shifted from cheeky mockery to venomous attacks. Racist undertones, brutal headlines, unrelenting coverage. For Harry, this wasn't just tabloid drama. It was a repeat of what happened to Diana. The relentless media glare that contributed to his mother's death now threatened his wife and children. Is it any wonder, then, that Harry wants to silence it? To him, this isn't censorship, it's protection. Protection of his family's dignity, their mental health, even their lives. But here's the contradiction. Harry left Britain claiming he wanted to escape the toxic press. He moved thousands of miles away to California. He declared independence from the system. Yet here he is, demanding that the monarchy he abandoned step in and strong-arm the British media into compliance. Isn't that the ultimate irony? And here's where the danger lies. If King Charles agreed to this demand, it would undermine one of the cornerstones of British democracy, a free press. The monarchy, already accused of secrecy and manipulation, would be seen as actively censoring critics. It would validate every claim of corruption and overreach. The public, who tolerate the monarchy as a ceremonial institution, would erupt in fury at the idea of royals silencing journalists. For Charles, the decision is impossible. He knows that intervening with the press would destroy the crown's credibility. He also knows that refusing Harry's demand would fuel Harry's narrative of persecution. It is another no-win scenario. For William, the stakes are personal. He has also endured his share of media torment. His late mother was hounded to death. His wife has been targeted, mocked, and scrutinized for years. Yet William has learned to play the game, working with the press, feeding them carefully managed images, balancing duty with intrusion. To him, Harry's demand is not just unreasonable, it's naive. The press cannot be controlled. It can only be managed. And demanding censorship only makes you look weaker, not stronger. But for Meghan, this demand is central. She has often said that the media's treatment of her was cruel, unfair, and racially charged. She has described feeling unprotected, silenced, and targeted by a system that didn't care about her well-being. For Meghan, forcing the palace to shield her from negative press would be the ultimate vindication. It would prove that her suffering was real, acknowledged, and acted upon. It would rewrite her narrative, from victim to victor. Yet let's not underestimate how dangerous this would be for the monarchy's future. If Harry were granted editorial protection, every royal would want it. Camilla, William, Kate, even Charles himself. Where would it end? And if the press caught wind of such interference, the backlash would be catastrophic. Headlines screaming, "Royals censor the press," would ignite fury far beyond Britain. Now, let's ask the tough question. Is Harry really naive enough to think the press can be controlled? Or is this demand symbolic? Less about actual censorship, more about forcing the monarchy to publicly take his side against the tabloids? Imagine the power of that. If the palace openly condemned the press for attacking Harry and Meghan, it would be a global declaration. The monarchy is with them, not against them. It would validate their years of grievances. It would silence critics, not with censorship, but with royal endorsement. But here's the twist. By demanding this, Harry risks becoming the very thing he once despised. Diana fought for freedom from press manipulation. Harry himself railed against the invisible contract between royals and tabloids. And yet now, in seeking control, he is asking for the monarchy to become the puppet master of the media. Isn't that the ultimate betrayal of his own ideals? Picture the scene. A king pressured to muzzle the press. A prince demanding protection not just from danger, but from words. The monarchy caught between loyalty to family and loyalty to democracy, and all of it playing out under the unforgiving spotlight of global scrutiny. And yet, even this wasn't the end. Because Harry's demands didn't stop at controlling the press. They extended to controlling his role within the monarchy itself. Not full duty, not full service, but a selective return, on his own terms, where he could appear when it suited him and vanish when it didn't. Because what came next revealed Harry's ultimate vision, a monarchy bent not on tradition, but on convenience. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Imagine a monarchy where duty is optional, where appearances are chosen like red carpet events, where responsibility can be dodged, but prestige is always claimed. That is the vision Prince Harry set out in his 8th demand, a selective return to royal duties, not as a full-time working royal, but on his own terms. He wants to attend royal events when it suits him, step away when it doesn't, and still be recognized as part of the firm. Think about how radical this is. For centuries, royalty has been about service. Endless engagements, handshakes, hospital visits, ribbon cuttings, state dinners. The grind of monarchy is not glamorous. It is relentless duty. Even Queen Elizabeth, in her later years, showed up day after day, often when ill or exhausted. William and Kate do the same now, filling schedules, enduring scrutiny, maintaining tradition. But Harry's demand flips the script. He wants the crown without the weight, the spotlight without the shadows, the prestige without the sacrifice. Isn't that, at its core, the definition of double standards? Consider what this would look like in practice. A Trooping the Colors ceremony. Harry appears on the balcony, waving, photographed by millions, headlines blaring his return. But the next week, when the royals quietly visit veterans or spend hours listening to community workers in freezing rain, Harry is nowhere to be found. Christmas at Sandringham? Maybe. A random town opening a library? Never. This is monarchy by convenience. Monarchy rebranded as celebrity cameo. And here's the irony. Harry once accused his family of treating him as the spare, of relegating him to a supporting role. Yet this demand reduces him to something even smaller. A guest star in his own story, appearing when ratings spike, disappearing when the hard work begins. Is that really the reconciliation he wants? Or is it a power play to prove he can dictate terms even to a king? Now let's look at this from Charles's perspective. The king's greatest responsibility is the stability of the crown. Allowing Harry to dip in and out would destroy that stability. It would create confusion about who is royal and who isn't, who serves and who doesn't. It would undermine every working royal's credibility. Why should Princess and/or Prince Edward toil away at dozens of low-profile engagements if Harry can simply show up for the glamorous ones? For William, the outrage is even sharper. William has endured the grind. He has accepted that being heir means endless duty, little privacy, constant pressure. To see his brother, who abandoned those responsibilities, return with special privileges would feel like a personal betrayal. It would not just insult him as a future king, it would insult him as a brother who stayed when Harry fled. But for Meghan, this arrangement could be ideal. She has never hidden her distaste for the more mundane aspects of royal duty. Endless handshakes, curtsies, and ceremonies were never her ambition. What she craves, and what she excels at, are the big stages. Oprah interviews, red carpets, star-studded charity galas. A selective royal role would allow Meghan to reap the benefits of royal association without the burdens that come with it. Could this demand, then, be her blueprint for the monarchy's future? Now, let's think about the public. How would Britain react to a part-time royal? Outrage, fury, disbelief. Taxpayers already resent funding Harry's security or lifestyle. Imagine their reaction if they see him appear only for glamorous events while skipping the unglamorous work others shoulder. It would shatter the delicate contract between monarchy and people. the idea that royals earn their privilege through service. But perhaps this demand is not about appearances at all. Perhaps it is about leverage. By insisting on selective duties, Harry forces the monarchy into a trap. If they agree, he proves he can dictate terms. If they refuse, he paints them as rigid, unyielding, and cruel. Either way, he wins the narrative battle. And here's the hidden danger. If the monarchy were to allow selective royal roles, it would set a precedent that could spread. Why shouldn't other royals demand the same? Why shouldn't the next generation, from George to Charlotte to Louis, say, "I will serve when I want to, not when I must"? This isn't just about Harry. It's about the survival of monarchy itself. But Harry wasn't done. His demands weren't just about titles, money, or appearances. His final condition was the most personal, the most emotional, and perhaps the most destructive of all. Because in his ninth and final demand, Harry didn't just challenge the monarchy. He challenged his father's marriage, his stepmother's place, and the very legacy of Diana. Harry insisted that reconciliation could only happen if Camilla, the queen consort, was kept at a distance. No involvement, no role, no influence in the process. Because what came next would reopen old wounds, and no one saw it coming. For decades, the ghost of Diana has haunted the monarchy. Every anniversary of her death, every photograph of William and Harry as boys, every mention of that Paris tunnel reignites old wounds. And at the center of those wounds stands one figure, Camilla, the woman once vilified as the third person in Charles and Diana's marriage. The woman who weathered years of scandal, eventually becoming queen consort. For the monarchy, Camilla represents resilience, reinvention, and the possibility of moving forward. But for Harry, she represents betrayal. Which is why his ninth and final demand for reconciliation is perhaps the most explosive of all. Camilla must play no role. She must be kept at a distance. She cannot be part of any reconciliation. This isn't just a condition, it's a declaration of war on his father's wife. Imagine telling a king that his queen is not welcome in the room where forgiveness is to be forged. It's audacious, personal, and deeply emotional. Because while Harry has often criticized the institution, he rarely names names as directly as this. In demanding Camilla's exclusion, he is not only reopening his mother's wounds, he is striking at the very heart of Charles's marriage. Let's pause here. Why would Harry make such a demand? To understand, we need to rewind. Harry has spoken, both in interviews and in his memoir Spare, about his feelings toward Camilla. He described her as dangerous, accusing her of leaking stories to the press to rehabilitate her own image. He even suggested she traded in private conversations to secure better coverage for herself. To Harry, Camilla wasn't just a stepmother. She was a rival in the court of public opinion, someone willing to sacrifice him on the altar of reputation. But there's a deeper layer. For Harry, Camilla embodies the monarchy's betrayal of Diana. She is the living reminder that his mother was sidelined, humiliated, and ultimately replaced. Every time Camilla appears beside Charles, crowned and honored, it must feel to Harry like a rewriting of history, as if Diana's pain has been erased, as if her memory has been overwritten by the very woman she once called out in her infamous interview. There were 3 of us in this marriage. So when Harry demands that Camilla be kept at a distance, it isn't just about her. It's about protecting Diana's legacy. It's about refusing to allow the woman he blames for his mother's suffering to also preside over his reconciliation. In his mind, forgiveness may be possible with Charles. It may even be possible with William. But with Camilla? Never. Now consider what this means for Charles. Here is a man who spent decades fighting for public acceptance of his relationship with Camilla. He endured scorn, ridicule, even hatred. Slowly, painstakingly, the public softened. Camilla transformed from mistress to consort, from scandal to stability. For Charles, she is not just his wife, she is his anchor. To accept Harry's demand would mean betraying the woman he has spent a lifetime defending. For Charles, this isn't just unreasonable. It's unthinkable. And what about William? His position is far more complicated. Unlike Harry, William has made peace with Camilla, at least publicly. He recognizes that accepting her is part of supporting his father's reign. He knows that to reject her would destabilize the monarchy he is destined to inherit. For William, Harry's demand is not only impossible, it is dangerous. It risks undoing decades of carefully crafted stability. But let's not forget the public's reaction. Camilla may be queen consort, but she is not universally loved. Many still see her as the other woman, the rival to Diana. For those who idolize Diana's memory, Harry's demand resonates. It feels like justice, like loyalty to the woman who was wronged. Could Harry be tapping into that sentiment, using public sympathy for Diana as leverage against Camilla? Now, let's ask the harder question. Is this demand truly about Camilla, or is she a symbol of something larger? Could it be that Harry's insistence on her exclusion is really about rejecting the system that allowed her to triumph over his mother? By drawing this line in the sand, Harry may not just be targeting Camilla. He may be targeting the monarchy itself, exposing its hypocrisy, its willingness to sacrifice love and truth for survival. And here's where the tragedy deepens. Because if Charles rejects this demand, reconciliation becomes nearly impossible. How can father and son find peace if the queen herself is not allowed in the room? But if Charles accepts, he undermines his own marriage, his own authority, and perhaps even his reign. It is a demand designed not just to heal, but to divide. So here we are. 9 demands. Titles, security, money, apologies, control, and now, the exclusion of Camilla. Each condition more controversial than the last, each pushing the monarchy closer to a breaking point. Is this reconciliation, or is this royal blackmail? Is Harry truly